hands behind your back now." The shout shattered the serene morning like a grenade. My wife Sarah froze on our front porch, her gardening gloves still dusted with soil, a look of sheer disbelief etched across her face. Two HOA and wannabe cops in ill-fitting navy uniforms loomed over her, one snapping handcuffs on her wrists with a smug grin. Her crime, a flower pot, a cheerful clay thing bursting with pink petunias placed 2 inches too close to our walkway, violating some absurd HOA regulation. I stood in the kitchen, my coffee mug halfway to my lips, watching through the window as rage surged through me like a wildfire. They had no idea who they were messing with. I'm Jack Harper, retired CIA field operative with 20 years of dismantling threats in places most people only see in spy movies. Nobody puts my wife in handcuffs over a damn flower pot. It was a Saturday in Willow Creek Estates, our suburban slice of supposed paradise. The sun was high, casting lazy shadows across manicured lawns and pastel-colored houses. Sarah, a high school English teacher with a smile that could disarm anyone, had been out front all morning, humming as she tended to her petunias. Gardening was her escape, her way of bringing color to our corner of this cookie-cutter neighborhood. We'd lived here 2 years, drawn by the good schools and quiet streets. But the Homeowners Association, led by a tyrant named Karen Walsh, had turned our dream into a bureaucratic nightmare. This wasn't just about a flower pot, it was the culmination of months of harassment, and I was done letting it slide. The trouble started the moment we moved in. Karen, the HOA president, had a reputation for ruling with an iron fist, her rulebook thicker than a phone directory. She'd send citations for the smallest infractions. A mailbox with a hint of rust, a shrub trimmed a day late, or a car parked a hair off center. Neighbors called her the warden behind her back, but nobody dared challenge her openly. Her enforcers, a pair of hired goons who patrolled in a golf cart like they were guarding a military base, were her muscle. Buzzcat, the bigger one, had a swagger that screamed ex-bouncer, while his wiry sidekick Twitch always looked like he was itching for a fight. They'd been sniffing around our property for weeks, egged on by Karen's vendetta against us. It all traced back to our porch swing. Sarah had hung it last summer, a cozy wooden bench with red cushions, perfect for evening chats over lemonade. Karen declared it tacky and non-compliant with the HOA's aesthetic standards. We ignored her, citing a loophole in the bylaws, and that's when the real trouble began. Passive-aggressive letters stuffed in our mailbox, voicemails about community harmony, even a creepy inspection of our backyard while we were at work. Sarah laughed it off, saying we'd outlast Karen's pettiness. I wasn't so sure. My CIO instincts, honed in war zones from Kabul to Caracas, told me bullies like Karen don't stop until you make them. That morning, I'd been sipping coffee, scrolling through emails, when I heard the commotion. Sarah had been rearranging her flower pots, trying to brighten our porch after a long week. I glanced out the window just as Buzzcott grabbed her arm, barking about repeated violations. Sarah, ever the peacemaker, tried to explain, her voice calm but shaking. "It's just a flower pot. I'll move it, okay?" But Buzzcat wasn't listening. He yanked her forward, and Twitch snapped on the cuffs, muttering about procedure. My blood ran cold, then hot. I set my mug down, slow and deliberate, my mind already shifting into operational mode. I'd faced down drug lords and rogue agents, and these two clowns thought they could terrorize my wife. Big mistake. I stepped outside, forcing my face into a neutral mask, but my pulse was pounding. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and Sarah's petunias, a cruel contrast to the scene unfolding. Neighbors were already peeking out Mrs. Larson across the street, phone in hand, filming through her blinds. The Wilsons next door, pretending to water their roses but stealing glances. Good, I'd need an audience for this. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice low, controlled. "What's going on here?" Buzzcat turned, sizing me up like I was just another whiny homeowner. "HOA violation," he snapped. "She's coming with us for non-compliance." Sarah's eyes met mine, a mix of fear and fury. She wasn't hurt, but she was humiliated, and that was enough to make my hands itch for action. I took a step closer, my stance relaxed but ready, the way I'd been trained to approach a hostile situation. "Non-compliance," I said, raising an eyebrow over a flower pot. "You serious?" Twitch smirked, but Busket's eyes flickered with something uncertainty. Maybe he didn't know it yet, but he'd just stepped into a game he couldn't win. I'd spent years reading people, spotting tells, knowing when to push and when to pull. These guys were amateurs, hired muscle with no real training, relying on intimidation and Karen's backing. But I wasn't some suburban dad they could bully. I was a man who'd slipped through enemy lines, disarmed bombs, and walked away from fights, and I was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Let me paint you a picture of Willow Creek Estates before that fateful morning. When Sarah and I moved here 2 years ago, we thought we'd found the American dream. A charming cul-de-sac, white picket fences, kids riding bikes until dusk. The houses were neat, the lawns pristine, and the community seemed welcoming at first. But beneath the surface, a shadow loomed, and its name was Karen Walsh, the HOA president who ruled with the zeal of a medieval warlord. Karen wasn't just A busybody, she was a force of nature, a power-hungry control freak who treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Her weapon, a 200-page HOA rulebook, denser than a legal code, dictating everything from the exact shade of mailbox paint charcoal gray, and quadrobytes, no exceptions to the maximum height of grass blades 2.5 inches, measured bi-weekly. Violate her rules, and you'd face fines, public shaming, or worse. Karen's reign wasn't just strict, it was suffocating. She had a team of enforcers, 2 hired goons who patrolled the streets in a souped-up golf cart, their clipboards and citation pads always at the ready. The bigger one, whom we called Buzzcut for his military-style haircut, had the swagger of an ex-bouncer who'd watched too many cop shows. His partner, Twitch, was a wiry guy with nervous eyes and a habit of cracking his knuckles like he was itching for a confrontation. Together they were Karen's attack dogs, sniffing out infractions and intimidating anyone who dared question her authority. Neighbors lived in fear of their knocks, their fines, their smug lectures about community standards. The stories were endless. Old Mr. Thompson, a retiree with a bad hip, got slapped with a $200 fine because his mailbox had a speck of rust. The Hendersons, a young couple with a newborn, were cited for leaving a stroller on their porch overnight. Unsightly, the citation read. One single mom, Lisa, got a $500 penalty for her kids' chalk drawings on the sidewalk, deemed a public nuisance. Karen even had a neighbor's car towed for parking an inch over a line, leaving them stranded for a doctor's appointment. Whispers circulated that Karen was skimming the fine money for herself, funneling it into mysterious community projects that never materialized. No new park benches, no repaired sidewalks, just her shiny new SUV parked in her driveway. But nobody had proof, and nobody dared confront her. She was untouchable, or so she thought. Sarah and I tried to keep the peace when we moved in. We paid our $300 annual HOA dues, mowed our lawn on schedule, even repainted our mailbox to match Karen's sacred color code. But trouble found us anyway, all because of a porch swing. Last summer, Sarah hung a wooden swing with red cushions on our front porch, a cozy spot for us to sip lemonade and watch the sunset. Karen declared it tacky and non-compliant, claiming it clashed with the neighborhood's aesthetic unity. We checked the bylaws, found a loophole allowing porch furniture, and politely told her to back off. That was our first mistake. Karen didn't take kindly to defiance. From that moment, we were marked. It started small letters in our mailbox citing minor infractions, like a basketball hoop 1 foot too high or a shrub trimmed a day late. Then came the voicemails, Karen's syrupy voice dripping with condescension. Jack and Sarah, let's work together to maintain our community's harmony. Once we came home to find she'd inspected our backyard while we were at work, leaving a note about unapproved tomato plants. Sarah laughed it off, her optimism unshakable. She'd get bored eventually, she'd say, squeezing my hand, but I wasn't so sure. My CIA training taught me to read people, to spot patterns, and Karen's behavior screamed obsession. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was waging a personal vendetta. And we were her favorite targets. The Flowerpot incident was the tipping point. Sarah had spent weeks nurturing those petunias, carefully arranging them to brighten our porch. They were her pride and joy, a small rebellion against the neighborhood's sterile perfection. Karen must have seen them during one of her patrols and decided they were her next excuse to strike. That morning, Buzzcat and Twitch showed up with a citation in hand, claiming the pot's placement violated some arcane rule about walkway obstruction. Sarah tried to reason with them, offering to move it, but they weren't interested in solutions. They wanted submission. When she stood her ground, calmly explaining the pot wasn't blocking anything, they escalated. Handcuffs on my wife for a flowerpot. It was absurd, infuriating, and the moment I knew this wasn't just about rules anymore, it was about power, and I was ready to fight fire with fire. As Buzzcut and Twitch marched Sarah toward their golf cart, her wrists still bound by those ridiculous handcuffs, my world narrowed to a single point of focus. The quiet suburban street, the scent of fresh-cut grass, the distant hum of a lot, all faded. My pulse thrummed steadily, my breathing slowed, and the old instincts from my CIA days snapped into place like a well-oiled machine. 20 years in the field, Kabul, Caracas. Berlin had taught me how to read a situation, size up opponents, and turn the tables on overconfident bullies. These two clowns, with their cheap badges and inflated egos, thought they were in control. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I set my coffee mug down with deliberate care, my mind already mapping the scene. Buzzcat, the bigger one, had a swagger that screamed overcompensation, broad shoulders, clenched jaw, but his eyes darted too much, betraying a lack of real confidence. Twitch, his wiry sidekick, fidgeted with his citation pad, his fingers twitching, like he was itching for trouble but didn't know how to handle it. Neither carried weapons, just pepper spray and zip ties, and their posture was sloppy, untrained. Amateurs. They relied on intimidation, not skill, which was exactly the kind of weakness I'd exploited countless times in high-stakes ops. Sarah caught my eye, her face a mix of fear and fury, but she gave me a tiny nod. She trusted me to handle this. That nod was all I needed. I slipped my phone into my pocket, hitting record without breaking eye contact with the enforcers. Evidence was key. I'd learned that in my first year at the agency. A grainy video had saved my team in a back alley in Bogota once, and today, it might save Sarah from this absurdity. I stepped out onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking under my boots, and forced my face into a calm, almost friendly mask. It was a trick I'd perfected in tense negotiations with warlords and double agents. Look harmless, but be ready to strike, gentlemen, I said, my voice low and even. What's the problem here? Buzzcat turned, sizing me up like I was just another whining homeowner. HOA violation, he barked, jerking a thumb at Sarah. She's coming with us. For non-compliance, his tone was all bravado, but I caught the slight shift in his stance, feet too close together, weight uneven. He wasn't prepared for resistance. Twitch piped up, clutching his clipboard like a shield. Rule 17B, walkway obstruction. We warned her last week. I raised an eyebrow, letting a faint smile tug at my lips. A flowerpot. You're cuffing my wife over a flowerpot. Sarah's voice cut in, steady despite the cuffs. I offered to move it, Jack. They wouldn't listen. That's when I noticed the neighbors. Mrs. Larson across the street was filming through her blinds, her phone's lens glinting in the sunlight. The Wilsons next door were pretending to water their roses, but their eyes were locked on us. A kid down the block had stopped his bike, openly recording. Perfect witnesses and footage would make this easier. I took a step closer, keeping my hands loose at my sides, my posture relaxed but coiled, like a panther sizing up prey. Let's talk this out, I said, my tone still calm but laced with steel. You don't want to make this bigger than it needs to be. Buzzcat laughed, a short barking sound, but I saw the flicker of unease in his eyes. He wasn't used to pushback, especially not from someone who didn't flinch at his tough guy act. Back off, pal, he said, stepping toward me, trying to reclaim control. This is HOA business. I didn't budge. In my head, I was already 3 steps ahead, calculating angles, outcomes, leverage. I'd faced down armed militias with AK-47s. 2 glorified mall cops didn't scare me. But I didn't need fists or guns, not yet. My CIA training was about precision, not brute force. Words, timing, and pressure points could dismantle Roswell, Ito, and Grok, created by XA. I'd make them regret this. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a quiet, dangerous whisper. You've got 10 seconds to uncuff her, or this goes way beyond your little rulebook. Buzzcat's smirk faltered and Twitch's eyes darted nervously. They didn't know I had contacted sheriff's office, mayor's office, even a few old agency friends who could turn their world upside down. But I didn't need to call in favors yet. I had them rattled, and the growing crowd of neighbors filming was my ace in the hole. The moment I spoke, the air shifted, Buzzcat's smirk faltered, and Twitch's nervous twitching intensified, his fingers fumbling with the citation pad like it was his lifeline. I stood on our porch, the morning sun warm on my back, my posture relaxed but coiled, every muscle ready for action if it came to that. My CIA training wasn't about brawling, it was about control, leverage, and dismantling an opponent's confidence before they even knew they'd lost. These two were out of their depth, and I was about to make sure they knew it. You've got 10 seconds to uncuff her, I repeated, my voice a quiet blade, or I'll have every news outlet in the state here by noon, exposing your little HOA Gestapo. I let the words hang, watching Buzzcat's jaw tighten. He wasn't used to resistance, especially not from someone who didn't flinch at his tough guy act. I stepped closer, just enough to invade his personal space, a tactic I'd used on arms dealers and informants alike. I know people, I continued, dropping my voice lower. Sheriff's office, mayor's office, a few friends at the FBI. You really want to test me? It was a calculated bluff. My agency contacts were mostly retired, and I hadn't spoken to the sheriff in years, but they didn't know that the mention of the FBI was the kicker. Buzzcat's eyes widened, and Twitch took a half step back, already reaching for the keys to Sarah's cuffs. The neighbors' cameras were still rolling, their lenses glinting from windows and porches. Mrs. Larson's phone was unmistakable through her blinds, and the Wilson kid had edged closer, his bike forgotten on the sidewalk. I caught Sarah's eye. She was rubbing her wrists where the cuffs had bitten in, her expression a mix of relief and righteous anger. Jack, she said softly, they wouldn't listen. I gave her a nod, keeping my focus on the enforcers. You're done here, I said, my tone final. Uncuff her now. Twitch moved first, fumbling with the keys, his hands shaking as he unlocked the cuffs. Sarah stepped free, her chin high, and I pulled her close, feeling her tremble against me. Buzzcat tried to save face, muttering about following protocol, but his bravado was crumbling. Tell Karen this ends today, I said, locking eyes with him. And if I see you on my property again, you'll regret it. They retreated to their golf cart, Buzzcat's glare half-hearted, Twitch avoiding my gaze entirely. As they sped off, the neighbors erupted in scattered applause, a few even stepping onto their lawns to cheer. Sarah squeezed my hand, whispering, "You're terrifying when you're calm." I smirked. "Wait till you see what's next." That night, I went to work. My CIA days taught me that bullies like Karen don't stop until you hit them where it hurts hard. I set up in my home office, a spare room with a desk and an old laptop I'd kept from my agency days. Its software still loaded with tools most people wouldn't know how to use. Sarah was asleep, exhausted from the day, but I was wired, my mind racing like it did on covert ops. Karen wasn't just a nuisance. She was a predator, preying on the neighborhood's fear. If she was skimming HOA funds, as the rumors suggested, I'd find the proof. I started with public records, county filings, HOA budgets, anything accessible. But Karen was careful. The official documents were clean, too clean. That's when I dipped into the gray zone. Skills I hadn't used since my last op in Istanbul. Using a secure VPN and some less than legal search tools, I dug into Karen's digital footprint, bank accounts, email trails, even her social media gave me leads. Within hours, I found it, a pattern of shady transfers from the HOA's account to a shell company registered under her cousin's name, fake invoices for landscaping and community events that never happened, funneling thousands into her pocket. It was sloppy, the kind of paper trail an amateur leaves when they think they're untouchable. But I needed more than financials. To bury her, I needed the neighborhood to see her for what she was. I checked my phone, the video I'd recorded captured Buzzcut's sneer and Sarah's cuffed wrists, clear as day. Better yet, a neighbor had sent me a Ring camera clip from across the street, showing the whole incident in high definition. I compiled the evidence, the financial records, screenshots of the transfers, and both videos. I anonymized it all, routing it through a burner email to every homeowner in Willow Creek. The subject line, the truth about Karen Walsh. By dawn, the neighborhood's group chat was buzzing, and I knew the fuse was lit. By Monday morning, Willow Creek Estates was a powder keg ready to explode. My anonymous email, sent just before dawn, had landed like a missile in every homeowner's inbox. The subject line, the truth about Karen Walsh, was simple but devastating, and the attachment's financial records, screenshots of shady bank transfers, and the damning Ring camera footage of Sarah in handcuffs told a story no one could ignore. I'd spent hours compiling the dossier, my old CIA instincts, guiding every move. The financials showed Karen funneling HOA fines into a shell company under her cousin's name, disguised as payments for landscaping and community events that never happened. The video, with its clear shot of Buzzcut's sneer and Sarah's cuffed wrists, was the emotional gut punch. By 8 a.m., the neighborhood's group chat was a wildfire of outrage, with messages like "This is insane," and "We need a meeting now." Sarah and I stayed low, sipping coffee on our porch swing, the same tacky swing that started this war. She was still shaken, her wrists faintly red from the cuffs, but her spirit was unbroken. "You went full spy mode last night, didn't you?" she teased, her smile returning for the first time since the incident. I shrugged, smirking. Old habits. Truth was, I hadn't felt this alive since my last op in Istanbul. Taking down a suburban tyrant wasn't exactly disarming a warlord, but the stakes, Sarah's dignity, our home, felt just as high. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. Mrs. Larson, our nosy but well-meaning neighbor, knocked on our door, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Jack, Sarah, you've got to see this. Everyone's talking about your email." She showed us the group chat where residents were demanding an emergency HOA meeting. The Wilsons, who'd filmed from their porch, posted the Ring video on the neighborhood's private social media page, and it had already been shared dozens of times. Even the kid down the block, Tommy, had uploaded his phone footage to TikTok, where it was racking up views with hashtags like #HOA Karen and #Flowerpot Rebellion. The internet was doing its thing, and Karen's empire was crumbling faster than a bad sitcom. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at the community center, a sterile beige building Karen had always treated like her throne room. Sarah and I arrived early, blending into the crowd of over 100 homeowners, more than I'd ever seen at an HOA gathering. The air crackled with tension, neighbors clutching printed copies of my dossier like it was a battle plan. Karen walked in, her usual smug grin replaced by a nervous twitch, her eyes scanning the room for allies. She had none. Buzzcut and Twitch were nowhere in sight, likely hiding after their humiliating retreat. The board members, a mix of Karen's cronies and spineless yes-men, sat at the front, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Tom, a laid-back retiree who'd always stayed neutral, took the floor as interim moderator. "We're here to address serious allegations against HOA leadership," he said, holding up my email. Karen tried to interrupt, her voice shrill. "This is a smear campaign, fabricated lies." But the crowd wasn't having it. Lisa, the single mom fined for her kids' chalk drawings, stood up waving the financial records. "You charged me $500 for chalk, and where did that money go? Your new SUV." Murmurs turned to shouts, and Tom had to bang his gavel to restore order. The Ring video was played on a projector, Sarah's cuffed figure drawing gasps and boos. Karen's face went pale as neighbors demanded answers. She stammered, claiming The enforcers overstepped and the funds were misallocated, but the evidence was ironclad. By 8:30 p.m., the board voted unanimously to remove her as president. Karen stormed out, muttering about lawsuits, but the crowd's cheers drowned her out. Buzzkit and Twitch were fired by text message before the meeting ended, their golf cart impounded by the board. The draconian rulebook, grass height, mailbox colors, all of it was scrapped, replaced with a simple code emphasizing fairness and community. The aftermath was surreal. By Tuesday, Sarah and I were local heroes. Mrs. Larson brought a casserole. Lisa dropped off homemade cookies, and Tommy's mum thanked us for giving her son a viral TikTok moment. Sarah's flowerpot stayed proudly on the porch, 2 inches too close and defiant. Karen put her house up for sale a week later, moving to a condo across town. Good riddance. Tom became the new HOA president, promising a neighborhood where people could live, not just obey. Willow Creek felt like home again, the kind of place we dreamed of, where kids could draw with chalk and porches could have swings.